Miss, I'm going to share with you. I'm 26 years and my childhood sweetheart is 25. We grew up together. We've always had a soft spot for each other. We started dating during our second year university.
I'm so co-curricular
We
activities.
now. Dear you.
Get 2 certificates. They will graduate with 2
Two
certificates.
certificates. We started dating during our second year in university. This year, we decided to get married after securing good jobs. Our church insisted we undergo some medical exams. We're sure, we're going to come out, fine. However, we're both diagnosed as AS. That's their sickle cell status.
Sickle cell status.
We are worried. We're yet to see a doctor. But can the drive doctor shed more light on really what this means for both of us?
Right. So good afternoon to all our listeners, and it's good to be here in the studio another Wednesday for us to talk about matters relating to our health. So, Kwame, sickle cell is a medical condition that a lot of Ghanaians, or probably all Ghanaians, would have heard about. But it is always very difficult for people to explain what it is. And it still continues to be a medical problem despite it being around for a long time. We haven't had a handle on it. And today, we're just going to look at just some aspects of this medical condition. And it always comes up, or it mostly comes up under this particular circumstance that our friend who sent us this message has just described. It is always around marriage. We're going to get married, and now, these days a lot of churches have become very progressive in their outlook, and therefore they strongly recommend that certain medical exams are conducted, and we always do the sickle cell test. I always see as part of the things that they recommend. I can understand their worry, and we'll get into that a little bit. I can also understand their surprise, because they're 25, 26, very healthy. I'm sure they've never been to the hospital for any medical issue. So, quote unquote, they would expect that they are fine. They are healthy. So we'll go into a little bit of that. So now, what is sickle cell disease? Kwame, sickle cell disease is a medical condition that is inherited, or it is genetic in nature. So when it comes to diseases in a healthcare space, we tend to classify them into, in terms of their etiology. So you may have infectious diseases, you may have malignant or cancerous diseases. But this is a genetic condition, meaning that it can be inherited and you can pass it on from one generation to the next generation. Okay. So that's the first point that I want everybody who is listening to pay attention to, that it is a genetic condition. Right. And Kwame, it ends up affecting the quality of the red blood cells that you produce. The reason why our blood appears red to everybody, except those with red-blue color blindness, is that it contains trillions of red blood cells. When you take a single red blood cell, its primary function, or the primary function of red blood cells, is to carry oxygen. So we're going to do a little biology. My son Kwesi, he's preparing to write BC.
Okay.
Next month.
Hey.
Into OT or revision.
Upon no.
So the functions of the red blood cells is to carry oxygen to all the tissues around the body. So the oxygen that we take into our lungs, it doesn't just float around. It's carried. It needs to be carried. And there's a pigment within the red blood cells called hemoglobin. And the oxygen binds to this hemoglobin. The hemoglobin is a carrier molecule, and it carries the oxygen to the cells or the tissues and the cells all around your body. And this hemoglobin is found within the red blood cells. Individuals with sickle cell have a problem with the type of hemoglobin that they form. So Kwame, the normal hemoglobin structure, we have named it hemoglobin A. And it is made up of two chains, alpha and beta chain. And that structure, that alpha and beta structure, each of the chains is made up of its protein. And Kwame, you know that the building blocks of protein are amino acids. So these amino acids are arranged in a specific pattern. Once you develop sickle cell, there's just one point on the beta chain that you have a small difference in terms of the arrangement of the amino acids, which are the building blocks. That's where the problem is. There's something we call a point mutation, just one point. So, imagine the rosary beads, you know, the rosary that people they use, or the ones our brothers of the Islamic faith they use. So you see, it's a string, and you have a lot of beads on it. Just imagine that of that long chain, there's just one point where the bead is different, and that's all it takes for the problem in sickle cell to happen. And when this happens, this whole hemoglobin, which is an oxygen-carrying chemical, it loses some of its functions. It becomes insoluble, and then also polymerizes, meaning it becomes hard and it bends. And the red cell then takes up a certain structure under certain conditions, which it shouldn't. It becomes sickle-shaped instead of it being biconcave or like the CD-ROM. I mean, the younger people, they don't know CD-ROM.
They won't know. The Gen Zs wouldn't know.
The Gen Z, they don't know. But it becomes like, if you think about a CD-ROM, that's sort of like a biconcave disc appearance, so that it can flow. This time around, it becomes sickle. Again, the Dabis, they wouldn't know what a sickle is. But Kwame, the sickle is a farm implement. Especially if you go to Akusi areas, Aveime areas where they do where they do the rice farming. It's the sickle is that farm implement they use for harvesting rice. So it's like a half moon shaped kind of structure. Because of this abnormality that has happened in the arrangement of the amino acids, the red cells take on this particular shape that I have just described when certain conditions persist. Infections, dehydration, very violent exercise, all right, are some of the things that can precipitate the formation of this sickle. And anything that would decrease the oxygen tension in the blood, the oxygen level. So when you're deprived of oxygen under any form of stress, physical stress, infections, violent exercises, dehydration, exposure to extreme cold, then the cells go from this CD-ROM shape to the sickle shape, and it blocks the blood vessels, which are cylindrical in nature, like a tube. So when it takes on the sickle shape, it blocks it and blood cannot flow. But I mean, this is the key problem of sickle cell. This sickle shape too also makes the red cells fragile. So the normal red cell, Kwame, will live for 120 days. Then it goes to the spleen, which acts as a cemetery for red cells, and then it goes to die there. So if you make a red cell today, it's going to live for 120 days before it is taken out of the system. Individuals who suffer this condition, their red cells, because of this peculiar problem they have with one of the chains, the red cells on the average will live for about 90 days, or between 60 to 90 days. 60 to 90 days. So they have a shorter lifespan. They adopt this sickle shape, and then they also occlude the flow of blood to other structures. So that is the problem of sickle cell. Unfortunately, people of African origin, we bear the greatest burden of sickle cell. You probably won't see a lot of it if, say, you are a Ghanaian doctor and you are working in, say, Denmark, or you are working in Iceland or places like that, where probably they don't have a huge African population. I don't want to use the US because there are a lot of African Americans, and then a lot of Africans go and live there, even the UK. So you have, because I have some friends in the UK. I know their family, a very good friend. This family, sickle cell. I've been with him to the hospital before on a few occasions and all of that. But you wouldn't see it. So really, it is a disease which is predominant in sub-Saharan Africa. But even when you take Africa, it is predominantly found in West Africa. So this abnormal trait, this hemoglobin, abnormal hemoglobin, we've given it a name. We'll call it hemoglobin S. Hemoglobin S. Remember the normal hemoglobin called hemoglobin A. So this one is called hemoglobin S.
S for what?
S for sickle. Like I S for
why is it more predominant in West Africa?
Right. So the link, we believe, is that it's with malaria. Malaria, West Africa is a hotbed for malaria. And that's why they wanted to give us the independence. They didn't fight so much. Go and look at East Africa. The way Kenya struggled before they let them go. We saw what happened in Southern Africa. They can't see independent also more because the malaria was like a cemetery for West Africa, was a big cemetery for the colonial or the explorers. So we found out that the red cell, when you look at the life cycle of the malaria parasite, it lives in the red cell at a point. And once the red cell takes on that kind of shape, it doesn't provide a good environment for the parasite to continue to live. So indeed, individuals who have one of the sickle hemoglobin are always protected from contracting malaria. So the reason why our friends are surprised is that they are AS. They would never fall sick, or they would never have an attack of malaria. So they're always very healthy. You need two of the genes, one from your mother, one from your father, before the disease can express itself. If you have one faulty hemoglobin and you have one good one, the A would overshadow or would dominate the S. And this is the reason why this Darwinian theory, natural selection, it has been more common to find the hemoglobin S in the West African sub-region compared to other sub-Saharan regions, African regions. So, Kwame, that is the connection.
Okay.
But if you know about the way the human cell reproduces, it will split itself into two. And Kwame, we've got 23 pairs, all right, in terms of our chromosomes. So you get one set from your mother, one set from your father, and then you now also have a pair. So these individuals who are AS, during reproduction, they will split their hemoglobins into two sets. One set will be S, the other set will be A. And then the other spouse would also do the same. So, Kwame, there are 4 individual molecules right now for the hemoglobin. And they are going to pair randomly. Kwame, I hope the picture is
I
clear.
understand. Yes.
So one would have A and S floating around, and then the other one would have A and S floating around, and they're going to pair randomly. To have a human being, you need two in that human being.
Right.
So he could make, the parent could be an A from the guy and an A from the woman, and their child would be AA. The parent again could be an A from the man, and then what? An S
From the woman.
from the woman, and then the child would be AS, just like they are. But it could also be possible that the parent could be an S from the man and an S from the woman, and the child would be SS, and you would have a full manifestation of the disease called sickle cell anemia.
Oh.
This is why the trepidation, this is why the worry, and the possibility, because Kwame, as I said, the parent is random.
Yeah.
We don't control it. All you're going to do is that you're going to put forward the A and the S that you possess. Like they say, put your cards on the table. It's A and S that you have. Yeah, your partner also has A and an S. And the parent is going to be randomly chosen. So Kwame, it is possible, and I've seen it. Both had 3 children. And at every parent, it was SS.
Wow.
And all 3 children, SS. It is also entirely possible that this random parent would mean that you'd get AA, AA, AA.
But
Or
you don't control that.
you don't control that. That's just up to the reproductive process and how things are done. We don't really understand the science behind that right now.
But a full-blown SS means trouble.
Kwame, it means a whole lot of trouble, unfortunately. It means a whole lot of trouble. Sometimes people look at the word and say, oh, okay, sickler, meaning otayare, fall sick all the time. So I'm going to share some of the symptoms. Right from infancy, there's something we call dactylitis, where the person would have painful swollen joints. So this child, 1 year, 2 years, always crying, they will develop painful joints of the hands and the feet. They tend to get pneumonia very often. So cough, difficulty in breathing, fever. They also tend to get something we call bone pain crisis. And that word, crisis, if you ever understand that, you want to really understand that word, look for a sickle cell person. It's a real crisis. Excruciating pain in every bone of the body. You have a whole lot of bones in your body, so you can imagine. All these things are happening because of poor blood flow, because of the sickle nature of the red cells obstructing the blood vessels. So you're not getting blood going to the bones, going to a whole lot of tissues. And therefore, you are in a lot of pain because you are depriving these tissues and cells of oxygen. It's not just the blood, but of oxygen. And if that happens repeatedly, you tend to damage it. One of the damages that happens is at the hip joint. The head of the femur, which forms the hip joint, the thigh bone, totally collapses after many years of being derived from that. And therefore, the person is stuck in a wheelchair. And they need very complex surgery. They tend to get a lot of infections, even, for example, of the bone. They can even get a stroke. People with sickle cell, because there is occlusion, a blockade of the blood vessels that are going to the brain, you get a stroke. So you find out, oh, somebody's 20-something, oh, they don't have a stroke. Oh, hypertension, only diabetes, doesn't have any of those things. Most often, stroke. The small for size, you see him is 30 years, very, very small. When they get pregnant themselves one day, it's a totally different ball game altogether. So Kwame, sickle cell in itself gives a whole lot of problems. Financially, it's a nightmare. You are always in hospital. It's a financial burden for a lot of the parents. It ruins marriages. Because, Kwame, it gets to a point, I have heard, unfortunately, some men refer to their women as they're bad luck or background and they already, it puts a lot of pressure on the marriage. So, Kwame, these are some of the ways in which sickle cell manifests.
So this brother who sent us this message, in his case, what would you suggest? They want to get married.
Kwame, that's why it's not a medical decision. But we are always pulled into that conversation because you are AS. So this is what I'd recommend. Let's put their issue to one side for a bit. Kwame, everybody must know their sickle cell status from the day they are born. When you are born, you are not in control. But to every parent who is listening, please make sure all your children, they know their sickle cell status. Put in their wallets, and let them wear it as a bracelet, something. This is different from your blood group. A, B, A plus, and B, all those things.
X,
no
Y, Z.
Negative. No, no. We're talking about sickle cell status. So everybody, Kwame, you should know your sickle cell status, and we can easily test it. In some centers, they can actually test it on the day you are born. In most centers, we'll say give us some 6 months. When a child is 6 months, bring the child to hospital, blood will be taken, and your sickle cell status will be determined. Either you are AA, AS, SS, SC. These are the common ones. There are other abnormal hemoglobin or CC. But Kwame, you will be put in one of these 5 categories.
Okay.
And they will know. So for me, that is the most important thing. Once you know, from age 6 years, when you are going to class 1, you know your sickle cell status. Kwame, when you meet the man and the heart is beating faster than your mouth can move, then one of the first things you are doing is that, you're having conversations around that.
Yeah.
You are checking the sickle cell status. Because I have seen, I've seen so many. They go in, AS, will pray, nothing will happen. We'll have children who are all AA. And then they have 3 children who are all SS. And then everything unravels. The pain, the difficulties you put that child through, a lot of parents end up with a lot of guilt. Right. So, Kwame, the message going out today is that please walk in tomorrow and check your sickle cell status.
I'm sure folks would want to walk in ASAP. Give us a contact and probably let's take it from there, Doc. Right.
So the phone number for Medical's Hospital, 0501 477 340. Our WhatsApp contact is the same, 0501 477 340. You can easily get your sickle cell status determined.
Okay, great. I mean, today is World Sickle Cell Day, actually.
Yeah.
So we had to do some education on sickle cell. So it's a very timely conversation.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And so if you're out there, know your status, very important. Hope through progress, advancing sickle cell care globally. Thank you, Dr. Osafo.
You're welcome, Kwame.
CEO of Medical's Hospital. It's 5 o'clock and Ken is here. Ken, how are you doing?
I'm good. Good to see you.
All right. Good to see you too. Talk to me. What's happening?
Well, it's 5 o'clock and here are the latest